I'll start over. All right, so welcome everybody to Embracing Your Shades of Power. Today is part 2. We're talking about femininity, and unfortunately, we had a break in the technological powers that be, but we're back. Last week we were talking about masculinity, and today we're talking about femininity and diving into this power of that we have as women, right? So let's just dive in. We were talking about an article that came out in Fast Company. And Savannah, you want to talk a little bit about the intro of what this article is about?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually speaking with a client, and they mentioned that they'd heard about this article, and it's a little bit, it's about two business women who are entrepreneurs who've started up a business in LA. It's a business that is similar to Etsy, but it's called Witchsy, I think, and it's basically, yeah, it's basically for artists who are a little bit more on the fringe in terms of what their art is like. So it's a bit more quirky, weird, interesting. And when they were first kicking off, they had a lot of people looking down their noses at them. They'd invested their own money into it. But because they were two women, they had a lot of people kind of saying, "You sure you want to do this? Is this, is this really going to take?" Like just questioning them and putting them down with stuff. And one of the things that they decided to do, because they weren't having prompt responses from people, because they were both female, when they would send out emails to different businesses to chat with them about wanting to collaborate or wanting their input or information on things, or even when they were discussing a few things with their staff, they'd send out an email and they'd get really derogatory responses, kind of not calling them by name, calling them, "Hey, you girls," and kind of belittling them with what they were doing. And so they decided to take on a partner to head up the business, who was a guy, only he didn't exist. So his name was Keith, and they would write the emails and they would sign it from Keith. And the response was enormous. They noticed that immediately people would reply back within hours of sending it, instead of, what they were experiencing, which was weeks, sometimes months before people would get back to them. They would reply calling him by his name. And it was just very, 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 very different. And so much so that they kept him on. They kept using it for, I think, a period of about 18 months whilst they established themselves. And they're now thriving with what they're doing. And they've retired him for the moment, because I think they've earned the respect that they can run and start up a company. But obviously, yeah, just that kind of I think that blew both our minds when we first started talking about it.
Yeah, like I was saying, I was so mad when I read that, because I'm like, it's unfortunate that we don't get the respect as women. People just don't see women as business savvy, when actually I wrote a whole article on this and all the different qualities of women that make us better entrepreneurs. So I have a whole article, I'll post it. It basically discusses all the different qualities that make us, basically visionaries, and the way we approach problem solving, how we approach, creation of companies, how we approach even interactions with people, right? Mm-hmm. How we connect more deeply to employees and all these different elements. But let's not get started.
But it's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting with that, like even with what you mentioned when we started the broadcast earlier about going to college, and because you were studying engineering, it was mainly men who you were studying with. And even this article and what you were sharing earlier does pose that question, like, is that encouraged for women to be more male-like because of this derogatory approach that a lot of women experience when they go into business or when they go into like higher education or whatever?
Absolutely.
So it's a big issue.
I mean, that's how I felt. I mean, when I went into engineering school, it was mostly male, and even in the program I was in, I was one of 5 women. I mean,
wow.
one woman of 5 people, and so the other 4 obviously were men. So, the discrepancy was huge. in all of my classes, and even I would say with the staff, right? Like most of the staff was male. So, I mean, there weren't very people I could relate to at all. But in any case, we were also talking about how much work it is to
Yes.
to be women, and we'll talk a little bit more about this whole concept of doer, right, in the masculine sense, and how, you know, in a way we have it backwards, but we'll get into that. But basically, like when we got up and we started getting ready, like we realized how much time it takes, how much longer it takes to get dolled up, right? My hair, my makeup, my lipstick, my outfit. Do I look okay?
Yeah, like we were saying, weren't we? Like for the last call that we did, where we were more male, or we dressed up as men. Like that took me 10 minutes, I think, to get ready. Like not even, like maybe 5 minutes. This one, oh my God, at least like half an hour, 45 minutes. It's crazy.
I got up earlier today. I just got to say that. to do all this.
Well, you look beautiful.
Well, thank you. You too.
Thank you.
All right. So, like I said, we discussed last week about masculinity and how it's defined in society, how men and women incorporate these aspects into our lives right now. And then we introduced ways that it becomes, sort of distorted and perhaps even dysfunctional. And then we talked a little bit about how we can start addressing that aspect of ourselves and start, making it a little bit more healthy in the way it manifests in our own lives, right? Bringing balance to that. So today we're going to look into the feminine aspects and how, it's perceived in society, how we bring that into our own lives, and what does that actually mean to you? What does it mean to be, feminine versus masculine, and in particular today, feminine, and how does that manifest in your lives? How many elements of that is actually incorporated into your daily life right now, right? And then actually there's one thing we started talking about that I found fascinating, which is that, we talked about how it took us forever to get dolled up. Well, actually, so maybe Savannah, this is a really good segue into that, because now that we think about it, it's like men are starting to get more, sort of go into this whole feminine role of getting dolled up and dressed up, but also like, and in my culture, like guys are starting to do their eyebrows, they're getting their nails done, their toes done, they're getting much more pampered, right? So it's quite interesting how they're doing it too, more now, right, than ever before. So it's ironic because we're usually the ones that do it, but now they're doing it too. And it's very much of a doer activity, right? It's kind of a masculine activity for us to do all this work just to look a certain way. And we want to talk about it now, or do you want to talk about it later, about how it's manifesting in nature?
Oh, I don't mind. You can jump in that one now if you want. I mean, that's quite fascinating, because it's something that I guess, like if we were thinking about in the 1700s or the 1800s, I think guys were doing it maybe more than women. I mean, I know women's dress has always been, especially in that era, you'd have to be dressed because there was so much to do. But if you think about like the Frenchmen in the Renaissance period, they were all wigs and makeup.
That's right.
Yeah, like there was a lot of decoration going on. And in nature,
they wore stockings too. I just
yes,
they
did. They did, and very well from the looks of the photos. Well, not photos, the paintings rather, images. Yes. But yeah, we were talking about it in nature, weren't we? And how it's more the male of the species that is normally brighter, like peacocks or pheasants. Like they're the ones that are more colourful. Than the female female counterparts, like the peahens for peacocks, and then I don't know what a female pheasant's called.
I don't know what a female pheasant's called.
Yeah, I don't know. But there are lots of birds where it's the male bird that's the most decorated, and the female is pretty plain. Yeah. So,
and I mean, and that's not just those birds. There's tons of other animals.
Yeah.
But birds is most commonly seen, much more commonly seen. But yeah, so I mean, even in nature, the males are the ones that are most decorated. So it's kind of funny how we almost have it backwards, right? That the women in our society are the ones that get all dolled up and prettied up, and the guys aren't. But again, it's starting to, I don't know if it's reversing or if it's just the men are becoming more effeminate too, right? I don't know what's going on.
I think this is why it needs to be a discussion, because
Yeah.
it's an exploration. I think it's an unconscious. I don't know if it's unconscious that people are witnessing things in media and they feel that they need to look a particular way, or if it's just that they're sensing that they want to look after themselves a bit better. And, it's difficult to tell what it actually, what's the motivation behind it, without speaking to people, without having the conversation about it.
Yeah. So we're interested in hearing what you guys have to say about this topic. So
Yeah,
please
absolutely.
feel free to chime in. But in the meantime, Savannah, why don't you go into the definition of what we discovered
Yeah.
as
Oh my goodness.
masculinity?
No, femininity. So sorry, I'm going to move my
Yeah,
I'm going to move my camera a little bit because this is going to make it easier for me. So yeah, so like when we spoke about masculinity, we looked up when we were talking about femininity. What is what's the dictionary definition? Check out your little kitty there.
He can't help it. He wants to be in the camera.
He wants to be part of it. I've got two dogs either side of me. You can't see them, but they're here. It's a very what do you call it? Animal.
They like our energy, I think.
Conversation. Yeah. So yeah. So when I looked up masculinity, I also looked up femininity because I was curious. Like masculinity, we had some like good describing words like vigor, strength, physical strength, all those kinds of things. When I looked up femininity, I was like pretty horrified, actually. We've got things like being female, womanliness, celebrated by wearing makeup and high heels, womanhood, womanly qualities. Like none of that, we have always delighted in her femininity. None of that actually tells you what femininity is. Not even close, like there's no description whatsoever.
On one hand, it's like super vague. On the other hand, it's like lipstick and heels. What?
Yeah. Like that defines you as female. I mean, that's just kind of crazy, really.
Yeah. It's upsetting that we don't get more adjectives to describe all the amazing qualities that mean being a woman, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But I think it's because we're still learning to define what that is. Like we haven't had, there's nothing that's pushed us to ask these questions yet. We've just been fighting to have a voice. And so in fighting to have that voice, we've taken on the what needed to be the sound of quite a masculine approach in order to just be heard. And now we're like beginning to be heard, and that momentum has begun, and still there's a long way to go. But now we have to redefine ourselves again because we've had to come out of a role in order to just be heard, because we've been so squashed.
Yeah.
Anyway, I could talk about this for ages.
Well,
Carry on.
And I have to say, one thing just occurred to me because I saw it on TV yesterday, and I'm like, oh, Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. The movie. I don't know. Have you seen it?
I have. Yes.
Okay. So I thought it was really interesting, and we can talk about it maybe at the end, because I think that what she does is a little combination of both, right? Because on the one side, she's aggressive, right? Because she's an Amazon, like hello. And on the other side, the movie was praised actually because she had such a beautiful, nurturing aspect to her that really resonated with like sort of that innate nurturing aspect of femininity to help heal, bring together like all those aspects. And I just thought it was beautifully done.
It was there was
loved
a lot
her.
of kindness in there, wasn't there? It was very much about feeling and vulnerability as well as strength.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like we talk about the Amazon thing, but actually one of the things if I start, like I'll just talk about a couple of the words that I thought about when I started to think about femininity. And please, you guys comment, share, what words you might consider as feminine as well, because this is, we're all defining this. This is not just like what we say here. But fierce was one of the words that sort of came into my head when I was thinking about.
You can't just say that word. You have to say that word.
But it's true, like. So that Amazon thing, I kind of almost feel like it is quite feminine in a way, because it's standing for a purpose, and fiercely pursuing it, like no matter what, unrelentingly, but not out of aggression, out of feeling like out of purpose, actually, out of a sense of purpose. And so feeling
Yeah.
vulnerability, openness, receptiveness, passionate, creative, nurturing, loving,
Can I
like
just say
those were the
something
words.
really quick
Yeah.
about this whole fierce word? Because it
Oh
just like
God, yeah.
I just lit up like a Christmas tree when you said that. Just because just because like you know how well okay, so in society, and we'll talk about this later, as well, but when women become overly aggressive and they take charge,
Hmm.
they're called bitchy, right?
Yeah.
But actually, isn't it fierce?
Yeah, a lot of the time it
Right?
is fierce. Yeah.
It's not overly aggressive and controlling. It's more fierce and, wanting to be out there. And how can you define fierce? It's definitely a different way of commanding respect, right?
It's force with kindness. It's force
Yeah.
tampered with kindness. I think, like when it's done properly, because I think people call it bitchy. Like I never forget, what was it that was happening? I think it was a family gathering that I was going to, and I was just sharing with some people. I was talking to my team or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my team are awesome. I get on great with them. They're incredible people. They're based all over the world. And somebody had heard the call because I was at a family gathering and I was in another room. So they just heard me speaking. And they called me. They said to me, "My gosh, you're really bossy, aren't you?" And I thought, gosh, if I was a man, I would be told how,
Assertive
my
you
God, you're
are.
assertive, you've got like leadership qualities, and this is amazing. Like it's really inspiring to hear you kind of going for what you believe in. And I just thought, well, that's really interesting. Like that's such a different take. And I think that women just are like if we're talking about aggression or whatever, um, women will be called bitchy. Women are put down when they stand up for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I think
in order
it's
to keep them small, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's just because it's not and I'm putting this nicely. It's because it's not associated with femininity, not
Mm,
because it's bad, right? But because
hmm.
it's so not associated with what we are that they have to give it another name. Oh, she just must
Mm,
be bitchy, right?
hmm.
Because it's
Or
not male.
bossy.
It's not assertiveness
Mm,
because assertiveness is a male quality. It has to be
hmm.
something else, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's
So
what I think might be going on. But yeah, I was as surprised as you that you couldn't find better defining words for
I was just
femininity.
sad.
Yeah.
Mostly I was incredibly sad that high heels and makeup was the thing that defined somebody as being feminine. Um,
Which again,
anyway,
based on the beginning of this conversation, is actually a very masculine quality.
yeah,
So,
exactly, exactly,
the
exactly.
irony.
Yeah, life is never without those. Um, what was I going to say? Yeah, I guess the question that we need to ask ourselves now, and I know you're gonna dig into some exploring, is how can we foster these feminine qualities and lead from that female place of power in order to be able to pivot towards success in the world and in our lives
Yeah.
um, without needing to lean so hard on being very male. And not that there's,
Yeah.
again, we spoke about this on our last call, not that having male qualities is a bad thing, but just how can we encourage and foster those more female qualities? And I think
Yeah.
you're gonna dive in and explore a bit of
Yep.
this, aren't you, Tiani?
Yep. 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 And then, obviously in the next, part three, we'll talk about the merger
Yes.
of both and really balancing both in your life. But yes, so we'll talk a bit about femininity and how, and how we're going to explore that in our lives right now. So I find it really interesting. And again, there's a reason why we're having this conversation. There's so much upheaval happening in society these days that now is almost a perfect time to talk about how we can explore these aspects of ourselves and learn how to balance them and marry them so that we can all also get along with
Yeah.
each other,
Yeah.
right? Especially the way things are going these days. And from my personal perspective, like I said, I went to engineering school, so it was predominantly male, and it was incredibly hard to balance being a woman in a male dominated field. I mean, let's just say that.
Hmm.
To say that the minimal aspect of it, it was a very logic driven, scientific, all brain type of environment, right? And so often as women, because we're tossed into these situations where we're surrounded, I mean, I was literally surrounded by men 90% of the time, right? Except when I was out of class and I had other girlfriends, right? But most of the time when I was in class, it was mostly male. And so I was, oh, there go our buddies in the background.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, and for me also, I had to lean on my more masculine traits. And for me, I also had a mother who was also, she was mothering, but she had a lot of masculine traits as well. She was very much in control, very much leading the household, and had a lot of those masculine qualities. So I had a double whammy of that aspect. So I did become a doer, a very action-driven, brain-focused, how do we solve this problem? All that kind of, attitude and way of thinking was like since I was a kid and all through college. So so I don't know how I became so feminine now. We'll talk about that later. But, oftentimes these environments push us to becoming more male, I guess is my point. And I think we talked about, if we look at nature, we call mother, right? Mother Nature. She's the real sort of feminine power, right? She's the one that we call Mother Earth. And what femininity is really more something that nourishes you from the inside. It's a nurturer, right? It supports you to grow and to flourish. It's not necessarily this like action doer, logical, mental type of, personality or aspect of ourselves. It's the intuitive, nurturing, present aspect of ourselves. It holds the space for you, right?
Yes.
That's what I love. It just feels good to say that out loud. Holding the space, being in presence with people, it's almost like that whole mindful aspect, that people are getting into now, that's that feminine nature of who we are. And even in creation, right? The egg and the sperm analogy, the egg just, kind of sits there and waits for the sperm to come. And then it sort of supports this whole process of creation. It supports. We are the supporters, right? This whole, aspect of ourselves is supposed to support and help. And, I don't know if you want to add to that, Savannah. It just sounds so beautiful. It feels beautiful.
The thing I'm thinking about that, because I've got some friends here in the UK who talk quite a lot about relationships and male and female. And one of the things that one of the guys was talking about when I mentioned to him about this egg and sperm analogy, you've got the egg that's, like you said, that sits there and waits. The sperm obviously comes, germinates it, and it starts to create prolifically. It starts to create, and I think as women we are like that as well. Like if given the opportunity, you give us a tiny bit and we can just go. We can just run wild with it. And one of the things that he was saying was that. He saw women as doers, and I don't agree with him with that, if I'm honest. I see women as intuitive creators. Like we will be given a small thing and we can build on it and build on it and build on it and build on it into something that flourishes and then takes on a life of its own practically. And I feel like it's reflected, what happens inside of us when we become pregnant to have a baby is the same process as what we're capable of creating outside of ourselves. How we do that, though, is much, it takes much longer than, it's not just, something germinates as an idea and then, 3 weeks later it's done. Like I'm noticing with my business, for example, I know the core of what I've loved about it and why I've been doing it and what have you. But the things that have allowed it to begin to gain the momentum is me following my feelings over time rather than using my male side of my brain to push and strive and hustle and work, overwork almost. I've worked hard, but I've done it in a way that feels honoring and listening to the more feminine side. And so what's really fascinating for me is that now the momentum of it is starting to snowball, but that's taken probably a couple of years to get to that place at least. So it's not the same as, and maybe this is why women are not seen as equals, because we do take longer to do things when we do them in our own pace. But the way in which something is delivered, it's like we bring it to life,
It's
literally.
more complete.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
like wholesome, and it's like, yeah, it's like a whole food approach to creation, rather than just, you know, putting a basic framework in place. Like we bring everything to it.
yeah.
And I think that's underestimated, especially in a society where, you know, the top focus is commerce. You know, the fact that even, and again, we've kind of avoided, as we will in this one, going too politically. But if we look at even things like what's happened recently in Houston, in Texas, and the flooding that's happened there, part of that has been because big areas of land that were left as green space were built on. And a lot of people were, a lot of the council kind of, I can't remember the exact diplomatic wording I'd like to use, but the idea
Well, they
is that
disregarded the real use of that
disregarded.
space.
Well done,
Yeah.
thank you. They disregarded the I think it's the environmentalists and the I can't remember the name of the people, the economists, no, ecologists. When they were advised differently, they disregarded it. And that's a perfect example of what happens when you place commerce and you lead with too much masculinity. It creates disaster over time, because you have to create sustainability, and that's what feminine power does. Feminine power creates automatically built in a win-win scenario for everyone. But
Yeah.
we're slower about how we do it, because we consider all the different options and we're listening on lots of different levels at the same time. And we're only doing that really as a conscious creation. Some of it's unconscious, but we're only really doing that as a conscious creation when we're really connected to ourselves, not in a
I think it's
chaos
more
where
thoughtful.
yeah, exactly. But it's also why it's so important for us as women to be present to ourselves and not spin off our access because we get over busy with different things. Because that's the only way we can make a significant difference in this world, is by being present to our feelings, listening to our feelings, and listening to the feelings of those around us, and figuring out how can we best serve the situation. And we have a bigger, I feel like women are more objective with these things. So yeah,
Yeah, and and I have to just say, like, for example, this weekend, and I told you about this, I had a really hard time.
Mm-hmm.
I had family over, I had a lot of activities going on, and I was literally from Friday to Sunday, like, busy back to back,
Mm-hmm.
and until really late hours of the night. And it's because people were in town, all this kind of tourism stuff that we were doing, all these different things. And I literally had to sit down and listen to myself and stop. Like on Saturday, I was like, done. I'm not doing anything on Sunday. or at least I'm going to do something relaxing, which I ended up going to the beach instead and just chilling with my son.
Well
right?
done.
But I had other opportunities, and I literally called them up and I said, I love you, right? But I'm not coming. Like, I had to stop. And I think that speaks to our power, right? Like,
Yeah.
when we are mindful of not overdoing, and I talk about this a lot, doing the whole busyness syndrome, when we're mindful of not doing that and really being in the moment and present and aware of our bodies, our minds, and how, sort of balanced we are at any given moment, when we can be more conscious of that and take the appropriate steps instead of saying, oh, whatever, I'll rest later, or whatever, I'll get this done really quick, right? Like, that's
because somebody else's thing is more important than mine. Sorry.
Right. And that's exactly it. You are allowing other people to, be more important.
My phone's like diving on this one. It's like, ah!
You're basically telling yourself, your mind, your body, your spirit, that other people's needs are more important than yours. And that ended up making me completely overworked and tired. So once I finally sat down and relaxed, I just felt more at peace with myself, right? And if we can do that more and listen to our bodies more and be more conscious and present more, that aspect of our intuitiveness and our nature is just such, you know, it's like a tool. It's like a tool we don't use enough, you know. So I just, I'm such an advocate for people just, and we all have it, right? It's not just women who have it. It's also men. It's just that we, I don't know if we want to say we have it more, but we are more in touch with it, I would say.
Well, as women, we're in a cycle constantly, aren't we? I mean, even just the fact that we have, again, I'm going to talk about the period word. The fact that we have periods, like we are constantly in a state of wave. Some women, you know, choose to ignore it through contraceptives, and that may be in part because they're also wanting to be responsible and not wanting to have children. And again, no judgment around any of this, but just it's,
of course,
you know, periods are something that as women, they lead us on an up, down, up, down, up, down. So we're used to fluctuation. We're used to change. We're used to having to just deal with what's thrown at us. So we're constantly in that state of, okay, how do I need to show up for this? How do I need to show up for this? We're much more flexible with life and things as a result. And I think we also have, probably because we go into places that, you know, each month can be a little bit darker. And in fact, in old gypsy law, they used to, the gypsy women, when they would have their period, would actually go away from the encampment, and they'd go and they'd have that time completely to themselves, rather than staying with the core of the society. And as women, we don't, like, we might take the first day of our period off, but it's normally because, like, for most women, it's because they're in pain. And not because they're actually, you know, taking that time to create that space for, like, okay, what does this month mean for me? Like, it's something that over the last, I would say the last 5 to 7 years for myself, I'm really conscious of that. Like, I'll take the first day of my period off. I might take a couple of days off even. So I build my month around that. And again, the pace and rhythm that happens naturally for me, like, I just feel so much more centered and well put together as a result of doing that, because, and also that time allows me to process and reflect on the month that's just passed. And I noticed that my period reflects whatever has happened in that month. Like, if it's been incredibly emotional, like, it's a more uncomfortable process. If it's been like a release, like, I can feel much lighter. Like, it's really fascinating, actually. And again, not something that we really speak about, because, you know, all of that stuff, like, a lot of women are divorced from the kind of waist down. They don't think about anything to do with themselves physically. They, you know, deal with having a period, but they don't really explore the wave of the emotions with it. And it's something,
that is so true.
Yeah, it's something that I feel is really important, and that also needs to be spoken about, because it happens to all of us. Do you know what I mean? As much as we, you know, maybe don't discuss it, it's there. And I feel if we discussed it more, we'd learn more about ourselves, and this discovery of what it is to be feminine would be much easier, in fact, because you'd see commonalities. So I've totally gone off the side on something here. Sorry.
Well, and just to, you know, caveat a little bit more. Whoa. My male cat is going nuts. Okay, because we're talking about periods. You know, when we talk about periods, the P word. You know, we call it so many names, but they're usually not great, right? Like, it's always seen as a negative part of our lives. And in fact, so many women are like, "Oh my God, I wish I never had it. I wish it would go away. I wish, you know." But to your point, it's a cleansing
Oh
time.
my God, it's amazing. And it's like, it's a reminder of our capacity to create.
Yeah.
Like, every single month, it's the reminder, like, your body will show up, it will open up, it will surrender and prepare for whatever you want to, you know, for any point at which you want to have a child. I mean, it's phenomenal if you think about it, really. But it's that reminder of how powerful we are, that we can bring life into form.
Yes. And I also feel like I feel more emotional when I'm during that time. But it's also like what you said, the time where you can start setting, you know, what you're going to be doing maybe for that month, or, you know, whatever you have planned, because I feel like I'm most in touch with who I really am. during that
Yeah,
time.
exactly. It's your most honest section
Yeah,
of the month
yeah.
almost.
And we
I
call,
feel that.
people feel like they're bitchier, like again
Mhm.
that word, but is it? Is that what really
Mhm.
is? Or is it that
Mhm.
you're just really more in touch with what you really wanted to say,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And that you haven't said because not it's not very female to, speak your mind about things
Right.
like that. A lot of things that get said. I mean, it gets said about children. They're there to be seen and not heard. But a lot of guys like women who don't talk.
Yeah.
They
They
like them
want
to
trophy
look.
wives.
Yeah, they want them to look good, and that's all they're really interested in. And sad for those women, because then they don't feel acknowledged, and they esteem themselves
Absolutely.
on what their bodies look like. And actually, that's something that I want to dive into now. Can I?
Go for it. Yep, go for
Yeah.
it.
Um, so I've worked with like thousands of people over the years, thousands of bodies, because I've been hands-on and done some bodywork stuff as well. And one of the things that I feel, for everybody, actually, male and female with this, is that our physical bodies are the closest thing to our own personal planet, than anything else. So I feel like our bodies, whilst we talk about being physical is a male thing, I actually feel like our physical form is a feminine, quality of everyone, men and women. And how we care for that form shows us how in touch with our feminine side we actually are, like how we would exercise it or how we feed it or how we pace it. It shows you how well you are in touch with that side of yourself. So that's the first thing that I want to say on that. And I'm, you know, when I talk about treating it kindly, like you can exercise a certain way that's nourishing, and you can exercise a certain way that's punishing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's an important thing to consider when you're doing each of those different things, especially if you want to bring a feminine side of you more to the top. Like caring for your physical body and how you approach that will directly affect how much more feminine you are, or not. But I wanted to talk about beauty, and we were just mentioning about trophy wives, um, and there's obviously a lot in the media that's been coming at us for decades and decades now, about what it is to look a particular way, to be more feminine, and what is beautiful. A lot of people esteem themselves on, what they look like, and if their body's a particular shape, and what clothes they might be wearing, or what accessories they've bought, and how they can adorn themselves. Now, I'm not saying any of that doesn't mean that you're beautiful, but the more I have lived in the world, and the more people's bodies I've seen, and I've seen thousands of them just because of the nature of what I've done. And I've worked with all sorts of different people, from people who are literally homeless or coming out of prison, to people who are celebrities and heads of businesses, and worked in fashion and all sorts of different things. I've worked with people who've had plastic surgery, people who are all natural in their approach, like, and everything in between. And the common factor the whole way through, from what I would say, is that beauty is about a feeling. Beauty is about it's not just about how you look, it's how you feel in your own skin.
Mm-hmm.
And you glow, like the people who are the most beautiful glow through their skin. Like their
Yep.
eyes come alive when they speak. Their faces dance when they're expressing things. Um, they're passionate about the stuff that they're up to. They're eager to share it, like they're eager to share what's kept them full of vitality. Like I remember one of the most amazingly beautiful people I've ever met, was a person in their mid 70s, who was tall and strong and just had this presence about them, like you wanted to be close to them, because it was like, wow, who is this, and what do they do, and how can I learn what this is so that I can remember how to do this for me as I grow older. And they're in their mid 70s, but they were on I think their third or fourth degree. They were about to go off and live with some tribes in Africa.
Wow.
And they were like telling me about all these different things that they've been doing in their lives, and where they've done their degrees and why they've picked different places, and you know what the curiosity that had piqued in them, like, and it's that thing of staying curious, I think, that allows you to keep that brightness in you, you know, and being honest with what you're excited about and what you want to explore in this world. So beauty, as much as it can be, you know, skin deep, I think a lot of people try and hold on to what they looked like when they were young, because that's when they were most curious. That's when they were actually intrigued and explorative in their lives. And that there's this divorce that happens because they think it's about keeping their faces a particular way rather than keeping their spirits vibrant.
Right.
So, yeah, that was just
I
something
totally
that
agree.
I don't know if you've got some thoughts on beauty with that.
Yeah, I just found it interesting what you just said about, you know, we worry so much about looking young, when it's interesting that a lot of people who, you know, there's many people who get surgeries done and all this stuff, and, you know, whatever, to each his own. But as we get older, they get these surgeries done, and even though they look youthful, their spirit is old, right? Like they, you know, they're not as vibrant. They're not, you know, I keep telling people, and look, I'm not a doctor, but, you know, your metabolism may slow down as you get older, but is it really your metabolism or you, right? I always tell them that, like, my son is running around crazy all the time. He has to get at least half an hour or more of, like, you know, running around and acting, you know, like a 6-year-old. Do you? You know, do you go run around? Do you go enjoy and have fun? Are you laughing as much as you should be? You know, are you enjoying? Are you connecting? Are you doing everything that you used to do when you were younger, right? You're probably not, right? And that can be carried through everything, through relationships, through all the different aspects of your life.
Oh my goodness, so totally. And I feel particularly as women, it's one of the most powerful things, because we, and again, we mentioned we were going to touch on this subject. We're not going to go into it deeply here. It may be something we go forward and explore as a conversation at another time. But as women, we are the only one of the species that has an organ, which is the clitoris, which is completely and solely for the purpose of pleasure. And so we as women, that is part of what we should be seeking. I'm not talking about just sexual pleasure. I mean in life generally, like what pleasures us in, you know, I don't know, through food or through movement or through seeing beautiful flowers, like what brings us pleasure. The more we invite and invoke that into our lives, and I'm not talking in a hedonistic pursuit here either. This isn't about, you know, having way more and consuming or anything like that. I'm talking about pure, innocent delight, like what brings you that real connection to yourself. That will, you know, bring you more into your feminine, and is important for women to remember as well.
Brene Brown, I forget which course, it might have been Daring Greatly. One of her courses that I took, she talks about a comfort list. And I keep a comfort list on my vision board. And it's basically like, you know, what are the things that when you're in like a pissy mood or, you know, whatever, what actually brings you joy? So, for example, for me, and we'll get into this, but, you know, dancing, music, you know.
Oh, so yes, me too.
Dark chocolate.
Yes! Oh my God, we're related.
Playing with my son.
I don't have a son, so I can't relate on that, but I play with your son with you. I definitely join in. I love
yes, drawing. Like, you know, what is it, you know, what brings you joy? And if if you're not happy, go do it. You know, are you doing it enough, right? Like, you should set time every day, and it's not to control your day, but it's like, as much as possible, bring in the things that actually bring you happiness, right?
Yeah.
Bring in those comforts. And hopefully they're healthy comforts, right?
Yeah. I mean, I even think though, with things that can be seen as unhealthy, like that I trust that your intuition knows what you're after. So even if it's something unhealthy, there's probably something underneath it that you do actually really need that's in that activity or substance. Like, absolutely. I trust that your intuition is that profoundly perfect that if you can sit with it and figure out, like, if you know that it's destructive. Like, for example, a perfect example would be, I've worked with quite a few people who've been alcoholics, for example, and they will say, well, but the drink is what helps me, like, relax and release. What it does a lot of the time is it helps them to become verbally honest about what's happening in their lives, and it's something that they struggle with. And so actually help, getting them, and I also support things, like Alcoholics Anonymous and things like that. I'm not talking about necessarily having to do this by yourself if alcohol is something that you struggle with, but having them take whatever the situation is that they're challenged with and writing stuff down, if they can't find the courage to verbalize it openly, is something that's made a massive difference. So it gives them the thing that they're after, even if the initial substance is what allowed them to get there. So it's taking the time to take a step back to get the perspective on what's the core of what you need in that situation. There's nothing bad. It doesn't exist. And
I would say that, in those cases, the moderation of the drug, right? Let's say 1 glass or 2 glass, whatever it was for them that allowed them to open up, to, talk and really express what they wanted to. But what happens is people then take it to extremes, and then it has the opposite effect, right? It numbs them, and then it's the opposite. You can't talk, you can't, So it's like, yes, it can be healthy to a point, right? To the degree that you need it. And then maybe you won't need it anymore because you've basically unleashed whatever it is that you needed to say.
And in I studied some Ayurveda in India about 8 years ago, and one of the things that completely blew my mind, I worked with 3 really amazing Ayurvedic doctors, all through recommendation, and studied with a little bit with each of them, and they were all approaching the same things completely differently, first of all, and second of all, they saw everything as a medicine. And I really believe that. Like, I took that away with me when I came back into, Western civilization. Like, I believe everything has the capacity to be a medicine for you. And so judging it or attacking yourself for doing something that's wrong, like, if you need help and you want to change something because it's affecting the bigger things in your life, then sure, you need to go do that. But if you're also seeking something from a substance or from a person or from chocolate or whatever it is, like, it's probably because there's something there's probably something there that you are actually seeking, though, because like with chocolate, it's cacao. Like, cacao is a hormone balancer for women. Like, it's one of the best ways to get all the kind of circulation going in the blood and opening the heart. So we want to have that. The challenge comes with modern chocolate is that it's predominantly dairy and sugar, which is going to gunk up your system a little bit. Just learning to listen to and trust your intuition, and finding a way through what might be a darker need is really empowering as well.
Absolutely.
Anyway, you're going to talk a little bit about the body.
Yeah. And on that note, since we've already started getting into that, we don't have a lot of time left, but I'll get into just a couple of different things, and maybe we'll do even just a 30-second, quick, fun thing to do that you can add to your day. So there's many things that you can do to really bring that feminine qualities back into your body, right? We want to embrace some of these things. So first of all, maintaining your instrument, right? Maintaining your suit. I call it your suit, right? Like, whatever you were born into is what you need to maintain, because you want not just quantity of life, you want quality of life as you age, right? And as we were talking about, we want to have that vitality and vigor as we age, right? We don't want to just be looking good and then absolutely hating life, right? We don't want that. So definitely take care of yourself. And one thing that I do is I do Epsom salt baths. And it's such an amazing thing to have, just because, one, it helps from the muscle perspective. It relaxes your muscles. And it also cleanses your energy and your body. It just helps release. It kind of detoxifies in a way.
It really does.
And while you're doing it, these Epsom salt baths, if you want to put candles, and, I'm a big candle person. So I always have candles. Music, make that comfort list, right? What is it that helps you relax, helps you, decompress, all those things. breathing, right? Savannah got into a little bit of that exercise in the first part, which is just, breathing meditations, any kind of thing that allows your body to just, sort of zone out and be in a relaxed state of mind. All of that, do that, right? Whatever makes you feel good, do that with moderation, right? Whatever cleanses and fills you. Another thing is, being present. So many times, and I talk about this in one of my classes, we're not present in our own lives. We're constantly in doer mode, right? So we want to get away from constantly sort of disappearing in our brains, in our logical mind, and become present in the moment. And I found that I was doing that a lot with my son, right? Because when you have kids, like, you're constantly in doer. Okay, I gotta, get his clothes. I gotta get his food. I have to prepare him for school. Like, it's constant do. And at the end of the day, I like to sit down and just, I actually, one of the things that I do with him at night is what were you most grateful for? I always ask him that. What's the one thing you were most grateful for? Or several things. You can name as many as you want. And I do gratitude stars. So I create like a little strip of paper. I learned how to make Chinese stars, have him write the gratitude. We roll it up into a little star, and now we have a jar full of stars that are all about gratitude,
Nice.
So all those things that help you bring to the present and also help you appreciate, right? What's been going on in your day, what you love about life, all those things. We need that.
Absolutely.
And along that note, I actually said something to one of my cousins yesterday, because she was, I gave her a big hug. I actually posted about it on Facebook. And she was just so grateful. She's like, oh my God, I love your hugs. That's what I needed today. And I'm like, oh, the simple things.
Yeah, it is. It's the simplest things that make the biggest difference.
Absolutely. And then so she was feeling good. And I said, great. One of the things that I learned from, what's her name? Marcy Sharmoff. Do you know her?
No, I don't.
Excuse me. Is 20 seconds, right? The 20-second rule. So the 20-second rule is basically, once you're feeling good, you're in that moment and that feeling of feeling good. And actually, Abraham Hicks talks about this too. She says 17 minutes, or Marcy says 20. Doesn't matter. Whatever it takes for you. Basically, sit in that moment of happiness and allow it to like sort of grow for 20
wash
seconds.
through you.
Yeah. Don't like, oh, great, I'm feeling good. Okay, let me go do something else, right? Like, don't do that. Like, basically sit in that present moment and appreciate that feeling of, complete joy and happiness. And so I was doing this with her last night. I'm like, yes, you feel good. Great. Milk it. Milk it for however long you can get, right? It doesn't have to be 20 seconds. Start at 20 seconds and then just milk it for as long as you can, because then that gets ingrained in your physical body, right? And then you can see, your body starts understanding what the feeling of joy is, right? In doing that more often. And then, I don't know, do you want to talk about this next one? Closing your eyes, looking at the area in your mind's eye.
Yeah, can do. Absolutely. So one of the things that's really important to help you connect with is just what you're feeling. And sometimes you might not know what you're feeling. And so one of the easiest ways that I found to help people to just tap into that is to have them close their eyes and just see what color is there. And it might be that it's, red, and it might be that it feels like a good red, which might be passion, or determination, or it might be feels like it's a gunky red, so that might be like anger or frustration. So just tapping into what that color is, and just being present and aware to what it is, rather than medicating it or panicking about it, or trying to push it away. It might be that going in and having some sort of support, like a treatment, like some body work done, or some energy work done, will help you to really find and center yourself and figure out what it is that's happening for you, and digest whatever it is that's happening for you emotionally. You don't have to do it all by yourself. It's okay to get support from people, as well as having your own tools that you use on a regular basis as well. But it's a bit like, you have a car, you're going to wash it, you're going to hoover it inside, but it sometimes needs to go off for to get it self-serviced, at the garage, and so it's a little bit like that. Like, we need to treat our body a little bit more like that as well, like maintain it ourselves, but then also take it when it needs it, regularly to check it out and make sure that it's healthy and doing all the things that,
Absolutely.
you know, you want it to be doing. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, just being present in your
Awesome.
body.
Yes, 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 yes. And then the last thing I wanted to actually, maybe two more things. One, we're not going to have enough time to do the exercise, but I did want to talk about it,
Okay.
which is one thing I do a lot is, well, I love salsa dancing, first of all. I know we talked about dancing. We both love dancing. And
Absolutely.
and I used to dance a lot when before my son was born, and then I realized like, oh my God, I miss it. I miss it so much. So I actually signed up for a 6-week course that one of my friends is offering. And that starts next week. So I'm really excited about that.
Yay, go you.
So yeah, I'm so excited. So one of the things that I loved about salsa is just the movement, right? So I wanted to talk about body isolations, and I can show a couple of different body parts that you can do it with. And then like, obviously you guys can play around with the rest. But one of the classes that they offer is body isolations. And it basically helps you isolate the different joints. And as we know in body work, a lot of emotions are stuck in your joints and a lot of
Absolutely.
energy is stuck in your joints. So what better way to release it than dancing?
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the, I don't know, the upper body, like we tend to hold, and you know, I do massage therapy. So like, oh my God, like all the tension tends to be up here or in
Mm-hmm.
like your hips, you know,
Mm-hmm.
lower back area. Like that's where I get a lot of people coming to me for help. So body isolation is basically isolating the joint. And I won't do it with my neck just because it's going to be too weird with this headphone, but I'll do it with my shoulders. And it's basically just a rolling movement. So if you just roll your shoulder, right, and
I'm gonna do it
roll
with you.
the other, right? So roll it and roll it. And then what you do as just as a starting point is that, but then as you get into it, you start doing the opposite movement and
Oh, I like this.
isolating your shoulders. And this is a really common movement in salsa, right? Because often we're doing this. And you can even incorporate your arms into it, right?
Oh
This
my
sort of
goodness, so we're gonna be
flowy,
dancing.
this flowy movement. Now you know why I like salsa so much. And then,
This
so
feels
if we
good.
if we stop there, one of the other things I do is allow you to bring your chest in, so you're thoracic, right? If you do in and out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can really just get
Roll
your
it at the same
thoracic
time. Oh my God, that's
roll,
like,
roll. Yeah, and that's just
wow.
your shoulders and your chest, right? Imagine the
Wow.
rest. So yeah, so stuff like that is stuff that you can do like in every joint of your body, whether you shake it out, whether you roll it, or you know, roll around your neck, things like that. One
Nice.
thing I will say about salsa is that, first of all, dancing I always found is, first of all, it's exercise, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's just fun because you're moving your body in ways that you don't normally do. Like most of the time we're sedentary, we're sitting in a chair, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting somewhere in a bus, in a car, in your, you know, in your desk. So we need movement. And right now there's a lot more activity happening with people having issues, you know, in these joints because we're constantly sitting down and not moving. The body was not meant to be sedentary. That's not what
No.
we were supposed to do. The only time we're sedentary is when we're sleeping. Come on, guys, you know? But not saying that you can't rest. I'm just saying, like, you know, we need to move. We need to be a society that moves more. Let's not turn into that movie, Wall-E. Do you remember that movie,
Yes,
Wall-E?
yes, yes, yes.
Oh
Oh my
my
God.
God. Where they
That's
were
like
all just
tattooed on my
sitting,
brain.
getting fed
Yeah.
the whole time. No, let's not do that.
And I couldn't walk.
Yes. But in terms of masculinity and femininity, I feel my most complete self when I'm dancing because
Mm-hmm.
it's actually masculine and feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ironic because the woman is the one that does the most presentation,
Mm-hmm.
but we also have to have the most control.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of a combination of both because we are the ones doing the spins and the turns, but actually we have to be controlled in the way we do it, and yet we still have to be elegant and fun and it has, you know. And let me tell you something. I will know if you're not enjoying yourself in dancing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's so
You can see.
apparent. You can see, you can feel it. You can see it in a person's face. You can see it in their movements, in their motion, if they're flowing, if they're not. It's absolutely visible. So there's no lying in in salsa dancing. There's no lying in dancing. If you're not enjoying it, it's absolutely visible. but it can be so much fun and so enjoyable and such a great integration of both worlds, right? What do you think about dancing, Savannah?
Oh my God, I love dancing. What I'm thinking as you're talking is I'm thinking we need to go dancing at some point, is all I'm thinking.
Come back to New York. I'll take you out.
It's gonna happen.
I'm the dancing queen.
It's gonna happen.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And one thing I just want to offer everyone, which I had created a do-it-yourself massage for the upper body because I just, oh my gosh, I just like, it's such a, joy to help people who are, having these issues. But I also feel like not only come to us and come to massage therapists and come to other body workers, but do it at home. Because I have so many tools at home that I use. I mean, I use a tennis ball and I just like, go against the wall. Yeah. Or I use one of those body rollers. I mean, like, do the work at home because you can't wait to get fixed every week. Like, fix yourself. You weren't meant to have other people fix you. You were meant to fix yourself. So anyway, I won't preach on about that. You know what I'm talking about.
It's a good point, though.
All right, so you guys, I want you guys to ask questions. If you have any feedback, any thoughts about this aspect that we just discussed of femininity, what is most authentically you and what % for you now is more masculine or feminine? What do you feel now about that whole aspect? Are you incorporating more femininity than you thought? Maybe you are, right? Or maybe you should be incorporating more of that. So feel it out. See how you are now. See how you were last time. See how you are now. And then we'll be discussing the next phase of this, which is next Tuesday, which is the merging of the two and allowing you to have balance. Now, we've given you sort of snippets of how you can balance your masculine, how you can balance your feminine. And in this next class, we'll talk about sort of the merging of the two and even more tools that you can use to balance both in your life.
Awesome. So, I can't wait.
Yeah. So, Savannah, thank you so much. I don't know if you have any other closing statements you want to make.
I think we've covered it all, I think. And I'm sure there'll be other things that will come up, but I'm sure there'll be conversations we'll be able to continue having. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved chatting about this.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me. I think we make a great team. This is such a fun topic.
It is.
Such a fun topic. And thank you all. I look forward to exploring the merger together in this next class next Tuesday. And in the meantime, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to help you. I'll send out a link to the DIY, to the do-it-yourself massage, and I'll put both of our websites in case you want to reach out to us individually. And all the best in merging the two worlds.
Have
Bye,
fun.
everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.